Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Maveen. Together with his co-founders, he built 913.ai, an AI agent company automating legal issues for insurances. Before we talk about 913.ai, we talked about his job experiences,
We were not allowed to leave the office during working hours.
how he builds companies,
Like, okay, you have to be a bit naive, I would say, then and just go ahead and build something for somebody or one person, for instance.
how he handles staff decisions,
For example, start to realize that middle managers are slowing things down. We need to fire them. Who do wrong hires can actually ruin the entire company.
Yes.
Easily. Just one wrong hire can ruin the company. Yes.
and so much more. I built in timestamps for you because the episode is quite long. I hope you enjoy it. Hello everyone to episode 4 of Scale&Fail. Today our guest is Maveen.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Maveen currently works at 913.ai. It's a company doing automating legal tech with an agent on the cloud. And he had a really interesting journey to entrepreneurship. He dropped out of uni. He is only 24 years old and already in a profitable VC-backed company. He tried multiple forms of work. And he was also entrepreneurially active at a really young age. So
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well. A lot.
Okay, and let's start right in at the beginning. So you said you had an entrepreneurial dad and uncle.
Yes.
And your family in general supported you massively through it. Oh, what were your first touching points with work in India?
I mean, most of my early stages in my life, like I was, it wasn't more like entrepreneurial or anything. It was just like I like to do different things. And I was always curious about how this kind of thing works, how different things work, whether it's about how graphic designing works, how video editing works, and all those different kind of tools. And I think I always had this kind of like ambition inside of me that I want to do something of my own and all those kind of things. So that started pretty early, like when I started like coding since I was 12, and so that was pretty early as well. Really.
Yeah, you code at 12. I mean, that alone is a bit crazy for if we think about Germany or how people start coding here. It's earliest in school, and then like for example, I had a computer science class in school, and we literally programmed a calculator. So it wasn't like even HTML, which in my opinion also isn't programming, but
It is kind of.
Yeah, it's a markup language.
Yeah.
So how did you start back then?
I mean, to be honest, like, so there was a guy, a very best friend of mine at school. So he was also like a techie like me. He liked experimenting with new things, different technology and stuff. And we had this teacher at school who was like a geek as well. He was a maths teacher, and we were always following him about like different things. It was like, tell us how to root a phone, tell us how to jailbreak an iPhone, and kind of that was, I would say, the beginning of like, you know, my interest in basically tech itself. That was through him as well a bit, and I was like, okay, I like something about it.
You could jailbreak an iPhone then that early?
I didn't jailbreak an iPhone, but I rooted like Android phones a lot. So that was, yes. So you could just, I had an old Android, like a small Android phone, and then you would like break its kernel and try to install different things that doesn't allow you to actually install. Yeah.
I mean, that's actually pretty cool. I think that part of piracy is kind of dead nowadays. But
that was a long time ago, actually.
But I think that teaches you a lot about it. Because working with the kernel, installing new packages is being Android based is based on Linux or the Linux subsystem. Yeah. So and then actually doing it makes you quite techy early on.
Yeah. I mean, I think it wasn't really about like I didn't care about like how the kernel looks. I just thought it's cool to actually root a phone and just to know how to do it. And then you kind of learn about it and you research about it and all those kind of things. So that was like, okay, there's this rooting thing that happens. What is more in this? Like, what is more in this field? And I was like, okay, I'm curious now, like how different things work, how languages work, and all those kind of things. And I was like, okay, let's just try to Google C. What is the programming language? Which one should I learn first? and all that. And I just started like watching YouTube videos a lot. I was doing like YouTube courses about C all day, watching tutorials when I was not in school. So rest of my time I was on my laptop, like just learning about different programming languages all the time.
Yeah.
And that was like kind of, I started to feel that, okay, I like how this works. Like I like how different things are connecting. I like the algorithms, how you can make it do certain things. And I would say that inspired me a lot from the beginning. So that was the childhood inspiration that came to me, I would say.
Okay. Oh wow. It's very interesting. So you also said you work as a graphic designer and editor. So did you also do YouTube videos by yourself then?
Yeah. So we had like, so I was I think 14 or something, and one of my cousins, he's like, he likes production. He likes like taking videos and making films and all those kind of things. So he was involved with these group of people who were doing like cultural musical events in the city where I was born. And it interested me a lot, and I was like, okay, maybe I should do something there. And he was like, hey, you know what, you could graphic design some things, because I was doing editing a bit as well. And then that was actually my first time actually designing a banner for an event. I'd never done it before, but obviously they didn't know about it. It was like, okay, I created a very good banner. And then they invited me to the event. I was able to talk to people there, like, you know, explore like how they do things and all. That was also like quite good for me. And I was like, okay, I want to do an event now as well. Like, so we had in that similar group, we got like a couple of people together, and then we started like thinking about how do we do an event. So it's a bit different how you would do an event, for example, in Europe and then in Kashmir, where I was born, because in there you have to obviously make sure that it's government allows it and all those things. You have to get clearance from the police and all those kind of things, and obviously money, which was technically getting sponsors as well. But we had no idea what we were doing. First of all, like we were like, okay, we're just exploring this. It's fun to just go around and to speak with different small businesses and tell them about what we are planning to do at the event, and kind of like how you pitch right now, obviously to startups, to different investors as well. That's what we kind of did to get sponsors for that event. So that was like, and obviously at that time I didn't know, like, it's like, okay, there's something called investors, there's something called pitching, we were just like, it was just out of, naturally we thought, okay, if we are doing an event, we go to someone who has money to give us for the event, and they obviously benefit from it. So those terms obviously came after, like when I obviously started 913, so I got to know more about that eventually, I would say.
But then you already earned money from that event earlier.
Yes, we did. We did, like, not a lot of money, but we did make some money, obviously, with that.
But I think that's like a really huge milestone for everyone in their entrepreneurial journey. The first sale from a real customer. That it's great. How, especially if you're young, you kind of see people who are all those professional and adults you look up to, and how did you not have imposter syndrome back then?
Because, I think the imposter syndrome mainly means that you feel like that you're not like good enough for this thing, or you're just pretending to be someone, right? But when you just are doing it, not thinking about like, this means something, this means like being a founder, this means following a particular idol or something like that, right? So we didn't have those idols at all. I didn't have those in my mind. It was just, for us, it was just about like a bunch of friends coming together, doing something together that would like obviously make us money, and at the same time it was fun to do it, because all day we would drive to different places with some of my friends and meet with so many businesses. We met with so many businesses, so many interesting stories, like, and the experience itself was good. And then you're not thinking about, okay, what does it mean to me? Because at that time I didn't care so much about like, okay, is this something I want to do all my life? I wasn't thinking about what I want to do in my life as well. So didn't have that, like, you know, I think the imposter syndrome mainly comes when you kind of feel that, okay, you're just pretending to be somebody. You're not, but if we're just being like ourselves, and it just didn't matter anything.
Interesting. I was like, when I tried my first ride of entrepreneurship, I was really scared of showing people what I was building, and kind of wanted to do it perfect right away. It was kind of this way of perfectionism and like fear of showing it that kind of gave me a combined experience to have a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I now got a lot better by speaking just to many entrepreneurs. And I think one sentence really stuck with me. If you're not ashamed of your MVP, it's already too good.
Yeah. That's what YC says as well. Obviously.
Yeah.
It's kind of their motto as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of like this setup here is the MVP.
Sure.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like when you have obviously there are a lot of terms that people have developed over time. Like, okay, this means an MVP. This means pitching. This means that. This means that. Right? When you have no idea what any of this means, like you just don't care about it. Yeah. And I think that's a good way to start as well, because you don't have any expectations from the beginning, you know? Yeah. Because, for instance, now if you go out to raise money for startups or anything like that, you just have this like a frame of like reference that, okay, that startup, which is my competitor, has raised similar amount of money, and I should also raise that amount of money, because not because what you actually need right now. Yeah. You have to think, okay, what you need right now, and then go ahead and pursue every step. And every, obviously, entrepreneurial journey, every startup and everything is different all the time.
Yeah, that's also kind of, I feel like in like 1.5 years ago when I moved here was kind of my start with entrepreneurship. And at first I was feeling like I was just learning vocabularies and acronyms. So, so what's a VC? What's an MVP? What is MRR, ARR?
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, those are more of the simpler ones, but
sure. Exactly.
Quite funny. Okay, and then you were a self-taught developer.
Yes.
I think we're now in an age where many people want to learn to code, even though AI is taking part of the job. Yeah. But what would you advise to those who are listening who want to learn to code?
I mean, I think now is the most, like, I think it's easiest to code now than it ever has been. Like, you don't need to know anything to be able to build, obviously, applications. Just like I was, like last year, I actually wrote about it on LinkedIn as well. Last year, when you were using AI or GPT to write front-end code, it wasn't that good, right? It was like, you had to like, it was like horrible. It didn't understand front-end. Yeah. But the back-end code, it understood great from the beginning. So you could generate great back-end code using GPT and all these models, but you couldn't generate front-end code. But this year, I think that has like significantly changed. That it blew my mind. I was the other day trying to build one of the components of our front-end, which involves just when you send a message, you also send like a file name or a file box within the message, so that you know that with this message you send this file. For example, typically I would think, for me, I'm not a great front-end developer, I'm mainly back-end. I would say that was like something I was like, oh, okay, how do I do that? I need to probably research, I need to do this and that. And then I came across like V0. It's like a library and a model connected to it. I just told, okay, I need this and that. I gave it my component and it just gave me a preview of what it built. I was like, okay, wait a second. Like in just 1 minute. Like,
it's moving
that's
fast.
insane, obviously. So I think to someone obviously who's listening to, if you want to learn to code and everything, I would say it's important to understand more of the high level architecture about how different things connect together. Obviously, you have to familiarize yourself with some of the terms. It's not easy. Obviously, you can just use cursor to do everything, which is some people call vibe coding, where you don't really understand like what is happening, but you just code for the sake of it.
But I think vibe coding only gets you so far. Like at some point, you have to get some technical details right, and AI usually does. Especially, kind of have to understand what you want from AI to know if you got it from AI.
Exactly.
Also, like if I don't understand the cloud at all, there are many scary stories about someone accidentally running an infinity loop on AWS or something.
Yeah, sure.
And this is still something that would make me nervous about just trusting AI. But it's definitely true. I think even for more experienced coders, learning how to use the tools right is very important.
It's very important. It's because obviously it's when you're building something for like just for fun or a side project or those kind of things, that's obviously the best way to get started as well. And like the easiest right now that anyone can do. Like you can just go to Replit. There are thousands of tools out there which help you code, and they code like amazing as a 10 years experienced developer would. But also at the same time, when you're building something for businesses or for actually selling and all those kind of things that involves some things that requires so much more than what AI can do. For example, if you're building for a corporate or something, they would want you to ensure compliance, and obviously AI can't let you do compliance, so you have to put those checks and all those kind of things. You have to look into the details, which obviously AI is going to miss a lot. But models obviously are getting better as well, and there are a lot of spaces that I still see models could be implemented which nobody is doing at the moment. For example, inside of cloud. So if you want to deploy something on a cloud, you have to set up CI/CD, and you have to make sure how these systems connect together. There's obviously no AI inside of Google Cloud or inside of Azure or anywhere where the systems are deployed. So that obviously makes it harder still to deploy things, for sure.
Okay. And then, your uncle and your dad are also entrepreneurs?
Yes.
How has it influenced you?
I think, so my father, he worked for a company as well, but he was entrepreneuring as on the side. And same for my uncle. Like, he was also employed, and he was also doing side projects on the side. I think the main inspiration actually was through my uncle as well, because he was this kind of a hacker, real life hacker, that would just, we had obviously a lot of systems at home, like you have the electricity transformer, and he would go ahead and fix that. He would fix cars as well. So he was like a multitasker to a very good level. And obviously I was there with him, helping him out with different things. We were quite close. And I think, and he did also quite some businesses, like small businesses, for a shorter period of time, made a lot of money, and then jumped onto the next thing. Didn't ever stick to one thing, but always like hopped around and went to the next one.
But when he didn't stick, was he able to profit from it?
He was, yes, he made a lot of money. Obviously, he made a lot of money, and some businesses obviously ran for like years, for like 3-4 years and stuff like that. And then obviously he changed his mind about it after. He was like, okay, I want to do something else, and all that. But the inspiration for me was like, okay, to be in an environment like, okay, where people from his childhood as well, he was always, since he was a kid, making money. So this is what my parents told me as well, that they were more like not as much as comfortable with their life, and so they had to work to actually be able to live every day and all those kind of things. They had to build everything on their own where they were right now. And they always obviously told us as well that you can do anything if you want to. There are a lot of opportunities there. It was never like, okay, you should do this thing and this. You should always do what you basically feel like. So that was, I think, deep inside of me, gave me this confidence to actually pursue what I actually wanted all the time. Not just like, okay, this is what others did and this is how I should do it as well. More like, okay, I want to do it my way. And that's what the inspiration came from, like from my uncle, because he did what he wanted. My father, he did what he wanted. So it was... It came along from there.
Interesting. So in that sense, they were also really great role models, right?
Yeah.
And cool. Okay.
It's very interesting actually, and obviously because again, it's a totally different world that I was born in, and the most of my adult life I lived in a totally different world. So obviously I was able to see, okay, what are the differences? What are the good things that I can take from one thing and what I can put in the other? So for example, the city I was born in, obviously there are a lot of opportunities, like, so I was able to do certain things, right? Then in super underdeveloped countries, but I was in a developing country, so there were opportunities, but not as many as there are in the EU, for example, right? Or in the other countries, for example, in the West, in the States or something like that. So, but there are still things that you can learn from that, like you kind of have to create your own system for everything. Like, so there's no one system that you have to, like, for example, if you want to get a visa here, you have to follow steps, right? You can go and look and like, okay, these are the steps that you take. But there it's not like this. You have to create your own steps. So that's like, you have to build. There's always this question of like, okay, if I want to do something, I have to figure out myself how to do it. Nobody's going to tell me. I can't Google it and do it, So that's like some differences. So,
I kind of imagine India really chaotic. So like you have like lots of Muslims, Sikh, Buddhists, and Hindus. So it's religiously extremely diverse, and also some Christians from the Britain left. I think English is still the main language, but you have different sub-languages in the areas, and it's more rural. So I don't know, a system that is so diverse seems hard to be held under strict rules, like because the people just differ so much. Or?
Yeah. I mean, I think every state is like different. People look different.
Almost a new country, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you just go to one stage, you're like, okay, people speak different languages, they look different, they have a different culture, they have everything's different, right? So you're like, okay. And then obviously every state has different rules as well, and like everything is different in every like. I really think it's quite huge, just one country, and it's obviously a mess, obviously because of so many people as well, right? It's harder to manage. I would say so much lesser in the Europe as well for her.
Okay, I think that was a lot about your youth. So those were the first initial steps about entrepreneurship. You did all of them while school. So did you have any big projects before university came, or you thought about it?
I mean, there was obviously when I was in my A levels, and I started to think about like, what do I actually want to do in my life? Before that, obviously we did events, we did like we created short films, we created like different kind of things. I did also cinematography for a bit, and we actually made money with that as well. By the way, so we were like there were local musicians. We were helping them create music videos. Obviously, they were coming to us with the recordings, and we were recording videos for them, and they obviously paid us for that. Yeah. That was just before. That was during the A levels as well, and I was like, okay, I just should find something where I can like just go full on. And obviously, I never had a doubt that I would do something else other than computer science. So I was like, okay, after finish my levels, I'm gonna do computer science for sure.
Yeah, I think you also told me that you had university classes when you were at school at 12.
Yeah. That's another. So obviously, when I was in school, I was 12 years old, and I wanted to learn coding. Like I said, I watched YouTube videos. I tried to get like as much as I could, but I was like, okay, there's something more. I'm missing something. I want to like get to know somebody who knows how to code and ask him questions about it and learn from it. And the best way, obviously, was to just go somewhere where people come to learn coding, right? So I found an institution myself, and I was like, okay, let's do it. I told my dad about it. He was like, okay, I can let you go there, but you have to manage going there somehow yourself. And I was sometimes taking the public transport, sometimes asking some of my friends or somebody. And obviously it was harder because I was so young, and I had to like obviously ask an adult. But I managed to somehow do that every single day after school. Wow. I was going there to learn just coding, and there was like there was obviously university students with me standing beside me. I was like a small kid learning to code and writing my. And at that time, obviously, I was using a notepad to actually to write down all of the code, and then I would later go home and actually put it in the computer to run it basically. Yeah.
How did the other students feel next to you?
Yeah. they obviously were probably very inspired. I mean, at that time I didn't think like it's something like crazy or whatever. Yeah. But I thought like, okay, I'm just here to learn, and that's what I'm gonna do. Doesn't matter. I didn't care so much about like what people thought, to be honest. Like,
but that's a good. I also think you did so many novel things. That seems to be a strength, because if you wouldn't have done half of that stuff if you always thought, could this be shit?
Sure.
Will be embarrassing. Yeah. Interesting. Because like if there's someone half their age, it could go against their pride or something. But interesting.
I think also like currently while we are doing our startup at 913, we've also realized like this still sticks with me till this date. Like this berserk approach that you just go ahead and do stuff without having to think about anything and just doing things all the time. Obviously it works to a certain extent. For example, if you're building a startup from the beginning, right, very very early stage, and now you obviously some of the founders be like, okay, now I need to have a great plan about the product for the next 12 months. I need to build a very amazing product that I can launch like immediately, that people will love on the first day. They will get hooked and stuff. And this creates a lot of like problems in itself, because now you're not thinking really about solving any small problem first. You're thinking about already about what you'll do in 12 months. Yeah. And that obviously is not a good approach for early stages. Like you have to be like, okay, you have to be a bit naive, I would say, then and just go ahead and build something for somebody, or one person, for instance. If it's anybody, for example, it could be the company for us, it was a legal service provider, but we built like very, very small, not even an MVP, but a prototype, I would say. And then you just go ahead and take the next step. Yeah. That's more better.
Very nice. So I kind of want like if you start a company, you kind of should have an idea about how you distribute and sell it. So like any business needs selling, and like
Mhm.
at some point the customer
Yeah.
needs even to know that it exists. Then how to build it and why somebody would use it. And like, would you say that's already too much?
I mean, I think obviously you need like some
Yeah.
kind of an idea about like what are you going to pursue. So typically, some founders have experienced the problem themselves. Like
Yeah.
if it's a developer, they might have seen something wrong with developing, or if it's someone who worked as a lawyer, might have experienced something while he was doing the lawyer job. That's actually the best way usually to start a company, because then you are the most aware of the problem and you can build something for that. And there's something like which obviously we always try to do. It's called mapping pain points. So for instance, if you're working on some feature, or if you're working on a product, if you're very, very early stage and you want to build something that's useful for somebody, you would interview people at the beginning. You would interview like 15 people about that problem, ask them questions about it, and obviously the right questions, and then try to like write all the pain points that every one of them explained, and then try to map them. What is the common thing that they all said, right? What is the common problem that you could solve here? And then you just solve that problem and then start to sell to them. That's usually a better approach, because if you don't obviously if you didn't face the problem yourself, or if any of the founders didn't face the problem but you want to explore it, that's how you would obviously go from there. And I think also what's important there, once you have the one pain point that you think like you can solve, you just go after that. Like, you just build a prototype, solve it, and then try to sell it, rather than be like, okay, now I need a roadmap for it initially. So that's not important, obviously, in the early stages, for sure.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I also I've heard way before with interviews, you kind of have a hypothesis about the problem, and you kind of develop it along the interviews, and you collect the data more collectively and then try to map it in behind, and not really develop the thesis among the interviews, but more afterwards.
Yeah.
Interesting way.
Yeah, I think you kind of like when you're genuinely talking to someone and genuinely want to understand their problem, and you kind of understand it within you that, okay, this is something I should go after, because you figure it out. You have already talked to 15 or 20 people and they all said the same thing about this particular thing. Oh, bros, comparing contracts is just so hard after generating claim, for example. After when a claim gets rejected, for example, for an insurance, we have to take these many steps, to solve that problem. It's just so painful. And 15 people say the same thing. Obviously, that's the thing to go after that, because 15 people have said it. Not like, okay, but first, obviously, you understand the process, like understand what the problem is, and then you have to go and think back and think about the process itself. Like, because usually the customers don't know the process themselves. So you try to understand the process a bit. And you're like, okay, what is the better version of it I could give them? How could I eliminate all of the 6 things that they do into just one step? And then you're like, okay, you go to them, you're like, okay, hey, you know what? I have found a solution for your problem. You don't need to do this, that. You can just do this, for example, with this tool, for instance. And that will obviously blow their minds up. They're like, okay, now I don't need to take 17 different steps to fix a problem. I have a better solution. I think that's the best way to start.
Yeah,
for sure.
Interesting. Okay, so is this the Antler way or the way you develop for yourself?
I mean, I think Antler way is obviously it's general entrepreneurial way that we've learned. I think at least I learned this.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing about which I also wanted to tell you about my A levels during that time. It was that I was started watching YC videos about on YouTube, and I was like, what these guys are saying, it just relates to me so much, like to the deep of my core. I was like, okay, that's so relatable, and I liked it a lot. It was like, okay, because when you look at different kind of content on the internet as well about entrepreneurship and stuff, most of it would be about like how you need a great business plan, how you need a great financial model, how you need a great pitch deck, how you need a great this. But YC says something totally different. Like, if you want to build something, people want to build something for one person, and then for the next person, and then for the next one, and then for the next one, then you'll automatically find what people actually want. Rather than being like, okay, I have a hypothesis about this thing, I have a thesis about this and that. That usually doesn't work, because you just over-engineer stuff in the beginning, which is obviously not a good thing. And that time I was like, okay, this is something I was thinking in the back of my mind that one day I'm gonna probably do something about it as well. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. Yeah, YC is a great source.
Sure.
I've also watched almost all of their videos. Okay, so you were finishing your A levels and you went to study, and you decided to go to the UK, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, that time obviously I didn't plan to go to the UK first. I was planning to go to Bangalore to study, and this was my father who said, "Okay, there is a university I've talked to. They have very good computer science programs, and you could look into it." Yeah.
Are the university in India high quality?
I mean, for tech, definitely. For tech, there are very, very best in like universities. There's IIT, for example. The CEO of Google right now, he studied in IIT Kanpur. So that's like, obviously, they are the elite universities which bring out great people, for sure. And it's harder to get into those universities too, as well. A lot harder. It's like Harvard, I would say, kind of.
Oh, wow.
In that level, yeah.
Okay.
For technology.
Okay, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, but but then you mainly trusted your father with that decision, or how did you convince yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bit of research, obviously, about my universities. I was like, okay, which one do I want to go to, and what do I really want and stuff. And at that point, honestly, I was like, okay, I just want to move out of the country, and I want to go to the UK now, and then I'll figure out. Then I like got into uni in Cardiff, and just I started my university there. Just like it was straightforward. I got the visas done. Everything went smoothly. Actually,
What made you want to leave India?
Because obviously I had this curiosity about exploring the world, and I wanted to see what's like, how do people live differently. And obviously it was specifically UK because people speak English, and there's a lot of influence that British people had on India overall. And I spoke English, and it seemed like the right place at that time. I was like, this might be. So, and I obviously had some of my friends living there already, and I connected with them. They were like, great, it's a nice place to study.
Okay, very interesting. So, but I think it's kind of normal. If you want to go out if you're young, I definitely had the same feeling. Okay, then you studied normal computer science. First, for I have is where you're almost as good as your professors or lecturers. And you coded for then 4 years already. And how did you finance yourself?
I mean, that was actually a bit surprising for me, because what I had expected from university itself was like, okay, I go to uni and we are doing these amazing projects all the time, and it will be super sick and all that. And I think in my first year, mostly I've written papers about different technology and different things, and it was like, okay, yes, where is the actual stuff of like doing things?
Where are the computers?
Computers, exactly. You have to build software. So it was like, there's obviously all of this structure that they put in place. Like, okay, you have these assessments, and to submit those assessments, which are papers about your research you did. So I think most of the uni work wasn't so much practical as much I would have expected it to be. So that was kind of like, okay, this is just easier for everybody, I think. And there was no comparison. And obviously we were still looking at the projects like on the side and stuff. But then I was like, have to do something about this. Because like while you're doing uni and writing these papers, they take time as well, and they take effort. And university has obviously tried it out. They just want you to graduate, and then obviously figure out a job and stuff like that. So that seemed a bit like, okay, this is not interesting so much. This sounds boring in a lot of ways. No offense to obviously to people who still are in uni.
Yeah, I definitely had the same experience. Like it seems like you absorb a lot of information around the topic you're kind of studying instead of doing it. It was helpful to like get some knowledge about those topics, so it's not like it doesn't help you find a job, but the actual skill was kind of something we all had to learn on the side. And I knew like when I went to the masters here, they expected us to be very good in C, but we had never C in the bachelors. We did a little bit of C++. It was really not a lot of C++. So the first month in masters, I just taught C to myself to actually do the courses I enrolled in. So yeah, I think that's general uni phenomenon.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was the same thing. And then it was COVID times as well. Everything was like closed down, lockdowns and all those kind of things, which made it even harder, everything at uni and stuff. and I just had moved to a new country. I was trying to understand the culture, and I was like, okay, what do I do now, and all those kind of things. And then I think in the second year of my uni, I decided, okay, I have to do something about this. And I was like, I told them, I need an exchange program. I want you to send me abroad somewhere. And they were like, okay, we have a uni in Paris. It's called Ipitech. You can do there, study there for 6 months if you want, and then come back. And I was like, okay, great. I did my French visa, and I went to Paris, started living there. And the university that I was in now was totally different than was in the UK. That was like a whole mental paradigm shift, like from the UK's education system to how French people did it. And in this uni Ipitech, it was quite good experience for me because it was all about building projects. There were no lectures, no assessments, nothing like that. You would just code. Yeah. They give you projects, obviously, to work on, and then you would just, like, you chose obviously some modules to work with, and they were just solely coding projects that you would have a team of 5 and work together with. So that was quite good because it teaches you collaboration, it teaches you actually how to code and stuff like that. But it was insanely hard as well because they were making us code games in C by adding graphic libraries to C, which is like because I'm not sure if you know about C obviously, but you have to you have to like take care of the kind of the memories inside of C as well. There are pointers and all those naive like crazy things.
That's a similar experience I had with C. So when I started to code more in C, I felt like I understood a computer way better than before because it's so close to assembly that you actually really have to understand what you're doing. There are no complex data structures. I mean, there's for the people who don't know a lot about C, a JSON-like object. So you can do basic objects, but those objects don't have constructors or anything. And you can't give arrays or don't have array standard. You have a library for strings and so, but
I mean, obviously, like you have to build it's about, like, for example, if you're coding in Python, it gives you all the components from the beginning. But if you're coding in C, you have to build those components yourself and those data structures as well, which makes it insanely hard. But the thing about hard things is that time, which I really loved absolutely about C. This was the first language I ever learned. So I wasn't like new to it. I knew about it. I knew it was a bit harder than the other languages. But when you start with the hardest and you go to the easiest one, they seem like, but because when you understand the cores of how to build software, which is what I think to build actually projects that are used by the world, like build emulators and all those kind of things, that the projects that we did at Ipitech was actually taught me a lot about like how to work in a team and how would I like imagine myself doing things. You would go every day. It was like going for work to do projects, not to uni. So the structure was quite flexible. Like you wouldn't have to stay at uni. You could go and code at home as well if you wanted to, as long as you submitted the projects.
And that sounds actually like a pretty good university.
But it's hard to graduate from there as well. It's people actually fail at a lot of modules there, a lot, which is quite difficult.
That's also something interesting because I've been at KIT for my bachelor's and now at my master's, and I can't think of anybody who actually quit because he was forced to. So people fail exams, but there's the Härtefallantrag where you can retake them a lot. And I really don't know anyone who had to drop out because of his grades or because he didn't pass some tests.
I think the dropping out part came when I was there. I was almost finished with it, and I had to move back to London. So I had some friends in London. I didn't want to go to Cardiff yet, so I moved to London. I was staying with my friends there, and then I was thinking there, like, what should I do next? Should I go back to Cardiff to finish my final year, or should I just look for a job? I was like, I'll look for a job, and then I was kept looking for a job there in London. While I was coding there, looking for jobs, applying for jobs, and then finally I came across with a startup in Berlin. I got a job there, and then I kind of had to obviously talk to university about it, that I want to do a year of like internship or work abroad, placement abroad again in Germany. They were like, okay, you can do that. We can change your course. Like, okay, so I went to Berlin, started working there, and in Berlin, obviously, it was only like, obviously, I didn't come to Germany for the sake of coming to Germany. It was just because I found a job and I started working there, which was also like the beginning of, I would say, working in a work environment, like in an actual real world, world scenario.
Okay.
After I put that, yes.
Yeah, interesting. So, but it sounds like you enjoyed the time in Paris, but you didn't enjoy the time in Britain or Cardiff.
Yeah.
So, you also quit relatively fast in Berlin, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I think like in Cardiff, I had a very great friend ecosystem, friend support and everything. But the only thing was I didn't see myself like okay, maybe I should pursue something. It was harder. It felt harder because of whatever, because I was a student there or something. But in Paris, it felt a little bit different. And then when I moved a lot, I was like, okay, I should like probably try to do something of my own. And university seemed to be demanding and stuff. And when I started working in this Berlin company as well, I started doing projects. I was really good at it. Like, I think I was the best there. I'm not just bragging. I think I was the best there. Because there were not a lot of developers, there were a lot of like no-code builders and stuff like that. So they were building like e-commerce applications for. It was more like a consulting. They would build software for someone else. But after like a month of working there, obviously you get to understand. You hear from people how the management is and how things are, which was quite horrible. It was like incredibly hard to stay. And the funny thing is that they would, we were not allowed to leave the office during working hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you would have to stay in the office all the time. You would eat lunch inside. You can't go outside.
It was a startup.
Yeah, it was a startup. It was
wow.
Kind of a consulting. It's a very small startup, but it was kind of like that. And I felt obviously like this is absurd and this is not complete. And a lot of things seemed like not right there. Quite sketchy. And I obviously wanted to stay out of trouble as much as I could in my life. And I quit. Like I was like, okay, this is it for me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it.
What else was sketchy? Like that sounds interesting.
There were a lot of things. So, for example, most of the people in this company were actually from abroad, whose visas depended on the job itself. And I think the manager that he was using it as on people. Like, if we fire you, you will be screwed. So that's like. So that's like a very threatening place to be. Like, you don't want to be in that kind of a situation. Yeah. Especially I didn't want. And I was like, okay, I should quit it. And then, this is not for me. And obviously I didn't have any job. It was from my university that I went to work there. Now the problem was that I had to go back to the UK. Yeah. If I couldn't find another internship or anything like that because they wouldn't let me. They were like, you have to come back now because you have to finish your final year. And either because your visas depend on it a lot. So I was I was in a very like difficult position that time. I felt very like, what should I do? I felt like uncertain about everything. I had hopes about working, moving to Germany and all that. It didn't turn out how I expected a lot. And I felt very sad as well at that point. And obviously everyone supported me. They're like, it's going to be okay. But then I was like, okay, I should do something about it. I just started doing projects. That was the only thing I could do. I could code like all the time. I was like, okay, I researched about new frameworks, learned them. I tried to code all the time and started applying for jobs at the same time as well. And then I found a full-time 3 jobs, 3 offers at least within a month, a full-time working job for the first time ever in my life. A really nice one offers. And I was like, okay, great. Now I'm in a better place than I was a month ago. And then I decided, okay, I should definitely let my university know that I'm gonna. That's it for me. Like I'm not gonna come back.
But that's very interesting. So people have fear of dropping out because they think they can't get a job if they do, or they have they promised their parents or anyone else to finish it. You found 3 offers. I don't know how many applications you wrote, but did it seem really hard to find a job? Because you kind of need some proof that you can do what you promise you could do. And I think especially in the entrepreneurial scene, it's quite common that people have their ideas, they love working on them, but university takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
and you kind of can't push fully on them if you're still enrolled.
Yeah.
So-
I think like the finding a job obviously is always hard, but it wasn't as much hard because for me especially because I was working on projects. I liked doing it. Like
Yeah.
I was just doing it, and then the only thing that I did was I posted about it on LinkedIn. I put it on my GitHub profile all the time. So I would always share it with everybody that, hey, I've done this today. I felt like this. I would wrote about like what I felt about it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, why did I do this project? What was the inspiration? GPT was out new as well. I was trying that
Yeah.
out. Built some wrappers with GPT, and that sounded quite interesting to me. And then people see it. So when someone is I applied through LinkedIn, a quite good source for me, I think. And people see that you're like doing things, and obviously most of the like hiring process for tech people and developers involved like doing a tech assessment where they give you a project to do, and I always would finish them within like half a day and send them back. They were like, okay, you're the first one, great. And then obviously there's likability as well if they want to work with you and all those kind of things. So I think just like I got lucky as well a bit, and got a job in Munich.
I think likability in general is in a workplace extremely important.
Yeah.
Like, I can imagine like in Berlin, if everyone was kind of implicitly had constant implicit fears of getting fired and having to leave the country, nobody was really happy there.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't a happy environment for anyone. Obviously, I tried to like. I think there was this one thing always I had with every company I've worked at. When things started to go wrong, I would always try to get people together to be like, okay, it's okay. It's happening. You should like. There's always a lot of more opportunities in the world. There are a lot of companies you can apply for, but some people obviously don't see that so much, and obviously there's nothing else for me. Nobody else is gonna hire me, and I think that fear obviously holds people back a lot, and lets people do it to themselves because you know, if you stand up for yourself, you probably might realize that there are more opportunities than you think there are. Yeah. So.
But that's also, when I think about it in that sense, really courageous. You had this one job in Berlin. You knew if you don't find another one, you kind of had to go back to Cardiff or to India, even worse. And then to stand up and say, yeah, this and this is bad, or just quit.
It felt like super scary. It was like, okay, what the hell am I doing? Am I just playing with my life in the whole entire future? And it felt like, okay, because my parents had paid a lot of money for me to go to the UK and to study there. The tuition was super high and it was super expensive. So
I thought the UK also Scotland has also government paid tuition.
It wasn't, so I was like paying £20,000 a year.
Jesus.
For my uni, so I was like a lot of money. It is. So it was really a lot of money, and obviously I was kind of saying like, okay, it doesn't matter about the money anymore, and all of those. That was why it was super difficult for me. My parents didn't say anything about that. They were like. They just supported me in this. They felt like, okay, he will do something probably. They believed in me. So that I actually felt like, and everyone close to me believed in me. So I think that helps.
Yeah, I think that's also really important about the decision because I think, for example, Gymshark founder Ben Francis, he said once in an episode, Gymshark, like he kind of first released a stringer, so like bodybuilders could pose in a gym with a cool logo, and their clothes kind of really started getting off because they were the first ones who made these kind of clothes that were not like really edgy old school bodybuilder there was a huge positioning difference because all the other companies who were doing clothes for bodybuilders were doing it for the like real bulks, like the 140 kilos in the off-season guys, and the normal gym goer who just wanted to look good on the beach or impress the ladies was not on a ton of gear and that heavy. And he said the company was running really well, like they were able to send their packages day and night. But the hardest thing for him was to quit university because he promised his parents to finish it, and
I mean,
do
for
it.
sure. I think that's
Yeah.
that's what everybody has. Obviously, there's about university. I have obviously thought about it a lot,
Yeah.
and over the years I've seen it, like how it turns out. Then after you take a decision or something,
Yeah.
obviously it's not for everybody, right? It's
Yeah.
like, and maybe everybody shouldn't do it as well, because
Everybody not.
yeah, exactly. Right? It's important, for
Yeah.
example, for doctors to go to uni to complete their studies. For lawyers and for all the regulated fields, it's super important that you are in an environment where you're continuously learning about something.
Yeah.
Or if you're in research, if you want to go into research or something, that's obviously for you. The education is the best part.
Yeah. But did you have the job offer already then, or did you find it in the weeks afterwards?
Do you mean during when I moved?
Yeah. So when you decided you would quit the job in Berlin, did you already have the new job offer?
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a job. Obviously, I was in a place like I don't have anything.
Yeah. Then okay. So I think that's how was it just the roles of your uncle and your dad that gave you the courage to really step up for yourself or get out? I think that's a really unique strength about you.
I think I didn't have strength. I was more like, okay, I'm just so confused right now. I was like, I just felt that I want to do what I want to do, not like, why should I move to Cardiff when I don't want to move there, when I don't want to live there, when I want to do something else in my life. And that's what actually inspired me. I was like, okay, so in this world, I'm a free person, because you have this in your mind that if you're in uni, you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
You have to focus on uni and all that things. It's like, it's inside of the mind, right? It's just like you have it in your brain and you're programmed that way, that there's nothing else. There's this steps you have to take before you go to work. To me, it felt like, okay, maybe it's not that important. Maybe I can just live without it as well.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was...
Yeah, great. I was like, yeah.
And since then, obviously, like once I did that, when I took the little bit of faith, I was like, okay, maybe let's see what happens. I got a job. I was like, once I had a job, I was super confident. Okay, this is something. It's proving what I believed to be true.
But that's really interesting. Because like I think I had a class about entrepreneurship last semester. Was really interesting, and constantly the number one thing entrepreneurs had to deal with was uncertainty. And you seem to master it quite early on. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, you moved to Munich. You choose that company because it was a startup, or?
It was actually one of the best startups in Munich at that time. One of the top 10 at least fintech startups. I chose. I had other offers who were actually offering me more money, but it was quite remote. It was remote. I would have to work, but I actually wanted to move to Munich as well, because some of my personal reasons as well. I wanted to live in Munich. It was nice, and then I was like, okay, let's just go with the Munich one, because there was an office as well. I could meet with people, and that was more of the motivation, like to at least connect with people in person rather than work online. And that's why I chose that one. And it turned out to be quite great. I moved here, started working. We were automating like back office processes for them within sales, and did quite great job. It was super fun. I stayed there for a whole year, unless obviously we started 913 while I was working there as well.
Okay, and but this was then actually a job you liked a lot and following, and then it turned bad again.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't. I wouldn't say it turned bad, but there are just some things that don't work out for you anymore at some place. You want different things. So while I was working there, I mean, by the middle of the year, I was so much convinced that I want to do something of my own. And I think a couple of weeks I thought about it, and I started like looking on YC matching platform for founders, and I interviewed a couple of founders. Two of them, the first one I interviewed didn't go well. Second one I interviewed was Emo. He's my co-founder right now, and we chatted. We didn't state like again the same thing, which came from the childhood as well, was that like we didn't say to each other that you will be my co-founder or I will be your co-founder. It was just like two people talking to each other about something they're interested in and something they're solving. And we connected on a lot of levels. For example, it was more about that he was working as a lawyer, as an M&A lawyer in law firms, in major law firms. He worked in very big law firms in Germany, in New York, and all that. And he was like, the processes are just so manual for M&A as well. And I was like, I work to automate some of the processes in operations. And he was like, okay, then let's just talk and connect. We connected WhatsApp, we're chatting every day about different things. I was telling him about technology, he was telling me about his problems. And then eventually we decided to do a side project together, and which led to, obviously, I was working at that time on the side. And then the management that I was working, they did a new hire and all that things. Things started to change. The worst thing that a startup can do in that stage, it was a Series A startup, is to act like a corporate.
Yeah.
So act like a bigger company.
Yeah.
That's like a death sentence, I would say, for startups. And I have like absolute faith in that is very true, because I've seen that happen. Because when you do wrong hires, it can actually ruin the entire company easily. Just one wrong hire can ruin the company. It's that simple. Yeah, it can. Ultimately.
So far. Okay. Can you explain it further? So
it has to be obviously an executive hire.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, not like if you're down the line, obviously that's different. Don't have much influence. It has to be a person who has influence. So for instance, I'm not against business consultants, but if you hired business consultants or consultants itself to be CTOs or something, that's just a bad decision. Because I think right now as well, people are starting to realize this with Gen Z as well, that you have these kind of middle managers everywhere, right? In different bigger corporations. And Amazon, for example, started to realize that middle managers are slowing things down. We need to fire them because they're slowing things down. And they want to give individual persons more responsibility, individual teams more responsibilities, than put someone on top of them to manage them, which seems to slow things down a lot. That's what exactly happened. And when you hire an executive, right, who has very much decision power, like good decision power across the company, he's obviously gonna want to take action. So great people, great hires, obviously you start to see the value immediately. You start to see a shift in the entire culture across the company. You start work differently. And it's not, I don't think it's necessarily anyone's fault, but it's just that the way of working. If you have a corporate background and you come to work at a startup and you try to implement what you did at a corporate at a startup, it's going to be difficult to do, because a startup doesn't work like that. A startup has to move fast, and a corporate doesn't move fast. So if you implement the same things that you did at a corporate, probably not a good idea, because that's not why it's not a corporate, it's a startup. So
I also think it wouldn't be fun for the founders. I mean, work is not just about fun, but the advantage the startup has, it can pivot fast or even make small changes fast.
Also, for example, I have friends who work at Google, I have friends who work at Apple, and what I've seen there as well, if you want to get a feature done at Google, for instance, it's going to take months. One thing. At a startup, you could just do it within a day, make a decision within a day. But what I've seen in some corporates, for example, Apple is structured that way. And some other companies that I know of, JetBrains, for example, is one IT company. I don't know if you know them. But their team structure is more like they have teams which are structured like a startup. So so every team has individual responsibility of something, and they have independent decision makers. They don't need to go to the higher ends to make a decision. They can do it on their own. That makes things much more faster.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So a lot of companies now actually try to act like a startup so that they can move faster.
But that speaks against the middle manager.
Yeah.
But what makes the consultant a bad C-level executive? I mean, CTO, obviously, because I think the CTO should be a techie.
Yeah, exactly.
And but CEO, CFO, why not a consultant?
I'm not saying it's a consultant would necessarily be a bad CEO.
Yeah.
It could be a really good CEO as well. I think some of the great CEOs were consultants and had some kind of a business consultant background. One of them, like Tom Bloomfield, it was a consultant and did Monzo, great company, worth billions right now. Doesn't necessarily mean bad, but obviously a CTO has, if he's from a business background entirely and can't actually understand tech, then it's a bad choice, because you need a CTO not to manage people. You need a CTO initially, actually, at least in early stages, to build stuff.
Yeah.
For you. because and the CTO has to build it. You can't outsource that. A consultant would outsource that thing. So outsourcing is bad.
Yeah.
Startup early stage.
Makes definitely sense. Also, like in a startup, there are usually not that people to manage.
Yeah, sure, 100%.
Especially at the early stage.
Yeah, I mean, I have one of my founders as well. He's looking for a co-founder as well, and a lot of founders, like I've heard this over and over and over again. People who want to be a CTOs and stuff like that, they always think that a job of a CTO should be to manage 5 developers or something like that. But that's entirely wrong. Like a CTO is not there to manage the people. A CTO is there to actually take the technological vision of the company forward and actually build it himself in the beginning to be able to actually understand the tech that they're building, not someone who's managing people. That's a product manager. So that's not a CTO.
Yeah. That also brings us further into the discussion of co-founders. To me, like basically a startup needs to be able to do things, sell and build, and usually both founders have to know a bit about the other part, because otherwise they kind of work against each other. Or so what made you choose Eno? And you also had a third co-founder, but she's not a co-founder anymore. What were you looking for in co-founders?
Nothing. I was just looking for someone to work with,
to
talk about these things and to explore different opportunities, to do a side project with. I was just looking for, I wasn't, like I said, like looking specifically for a co-founder. I was just looking for someone, a person who aligns with my ideas, with my values, what I believe in, and we get along a lot. So for Ima and me, it was like we just got along from day one. We started talking. We didn't as in decide, okay, hey, let's draw articles of association tomorrow. We were like, let's do a side project together. That's what Paul Graham says as well. Like, if you want to find a great co-founder, you have to work with them. Try to work with them for a couple of weeks. And it happened naturally to us. Like, we just started working together. And then obviously we had another co-founder. He was Marcus. He was working in Singapore at that time for BMW. And we started working on a legal assistant together. I was building the code, and obviously including Marcus. And Imo was obviously looking into the business side of things and all that. We launched it. We got 200 user signups within a week. It was quite awesome. Yeah, we felt good about it as well.
So what was the version 1 of the product?
It was just legal assistant. Basically, GPT 3.5 was out. We built a wrap around it. We put some system prompts, made it behave a certain way, and it worked pretty well. People bought it, so which was quite interesting to see.
So basically, if you're in Berlin and the parking spots are not available, you could ask the rapper how high the fine is if you park it.
It was necessarily not that, but it was more about like how to compare two contracts to behave like a lawyer. So it had like a very, very huge system prompt with with Emo's knowledge, because he's a lawyer, about like what does a lawyer do when you have when he needs to compare contracts. So we just system prompted those things, and then on top of that, obviously we eventually realized that this is not enough, and we need some kind of a knowledge behind it. And that's when we started looking into vector databases. And at that time, like the entire RAG system, like of retrieval augmented generation, wasn't like, there was no such concept yet. People were still discovering it. People were writing papers about it. But we also started to explore it, like with that hype in some ways.
Interesting. So okay. So to put it into simpler ones, if I would move into a new house here, and I fear that the landlord is kind of scamming me, I could give the rapper the paper, and it would say, you're getting scammed.
Sure.
Or hopefully not.
Sure. I mean, obviously at that time, GPT 3.5 was like hallucinating a lot as well. But we understood like this was somewhere good to start, I would say.
Was it on purpose that you did an AI startup? Because like it's the term AGI is thrown a lot around, and it seems to be the new big thing.
It was because of AI, yes. It wasn't necessarily because just it's AI, because we realized that legal world, it's all about language. So there's law, it's natural language. It's written in books, it's written in knowledge work, right? And we kind of from the day one when GPT 3.0 was like, this is gonna be change how people work with knowledge, and that's obviously happening now. for most of the knowledge workers, it's automated. So because what models can do best is understand text, which obviously wasn't possible before with just code.
Yeah. Okay. And then you came to Antler, right?
Yes.
So back then, before you had said you had 200 signups, but did they already pay or?
They didn't pay at that time. It was just because we were just trying out to see like what will happen if we put it out there.
Yeah.
Would people actually at least take a look at it? And we realized that people took a look at it because of the AI hype or whatever. They were interested. There was some kind of an interest, which was a good signal for us. And then we were like, okay, we were gonna join Antler.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story how Antler happened as well. So the Monday cohort was starting, and Sunday, one of the partners at Antler reached out to us. Was like, we are doing a cohort in Munich. It's the first ever cohort in Munich, and you guys wanna join in? We were like, okay, but why would? So obviously they said you would get 100K investment and all those kind of things and a great network, blah blah. We were like, okay, but, and we thought about it for a while. We were like, okay, is it really worth 10% of our company? And at that time, we are not even a company yet. like we don't have anything. And I think what is the worst thing that could happen? Just like we get 100K to work on something that we like for full time. And we really enjoyed the conversation. We had a video call with Christoph. He's one of the partners there. And we enjoyed the conversation with him. He told us about it. It's just not about money. It's about the network. It's about this and that and all those kind of things. You sit with other entrepreneurs. You learn things. You can bring your team in with you. It's absolutely fine. And obviously taking the investment at the end was also our decision to whether take it or not. It was not mandatory. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
Getting into a VC also means pressure.
Sure.
It's good way in a sense that you kind of are more forced to push forward. I think actually one of the ways to get more productive is to have more real deadlines because deadlines make you want to move. There's a reason why most students learn the most in the exam phase and not the 4 months prior. But also some VCs just try to throw X against the wall and see what sticks. So
I think obviously for like early stages, like at that time like for very, very early stage founders, like we were at that time, like you don't have anything, you're not even legally a company yet. You're just building a project together. You have a lot of like thoughts about, like you have a mental like idea about imagination about like how a startup should look like, right? And it's almost the same for everybody, by the way. At those stages, they think of a startup as something cool. It's just about managing people. It's about doing strategy. It's about doing this and that and all those kind of things. But it's not. It's really not about just strategy. It's a lot more than just like doing strategy and thinking about what to and fundraising, obviously. But then you kind of at that point, we were, like I said, we were just like, okay, let's see. It's the best. Until that point, we couldn't like have any serious conversations between the 3 founding team. So, and the first day at Antler, we sat down together with Christoph, and he was like, "When are you guys gonna go full time now?" Then, like, this was the first question, and we're like, "We don't know. I am still working at a company."
Was it the fintech company?
Yeah, I was still working at the fintech company. It was in the September of 23. So it was while I was doing that, and then Imo was obviously doing his PhD in law, and then Marcus was in Singapore working for BNB as an innovation manager and head of innovation. He was there, and this was the first thing that they asked us. They're like, "What are you gonna do about this?" And that evening we sat down together, Marcus, me, and Imo, about this, to have this talk. What are we gonna do? I was like, I'm all in. Like, I'm just ready to quit right now. I'm full on like into this. Imo was also like, yes, let's do it. Marcus was a bit hesitant. He was like, I'm not sure, and which is fine as well because of his personal reason. Didn't want to move to Germany and everything. And like, it's fine. It was really obviously a pleasure to work with you. It was really fun. We felt really sad that time as well because it's someone who we worked for 2 months and we had obviously plans together. We're still in touch, but then Emo and me were the only ones left. And they were like, okay. Next day, Emo was on a train to Munich to do the cohort. And I think it was the best decision we ever made to actually join Antler. It was quite good. Yeah.
Okay. So then, how large was the difference between working part-time also and full-time?
Do you mean? Yeah. Obviously, it changed everything.
Okay.
It changed everything. So I quit my job. Because of all of the reasons that I just mentioned. And I was like, okay, now there's nothing else that matters more than this right now. Right? I can work day, I can work night, I can work every time just on what I really, really believe in, right? And that happened, like the Antler cohort time as well, meeting with other founders, meeting with other entrepreneurs, and getting to know the VC world in Germany itself, the network and everything, just opened doors for us a lot. And we were working day and night, like every day till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the night, and then sleeping, and then again wake up every morning, do the same thing, like in the early start, just work every single day. And obviously in between breaks and stuff as well, not like but most of the time was only about work, about building all the time in early stages. And then we got investment, and it gave us a freedom that now
so you didn't get the 100K initially. So you just got into the batch. Okay.
Exactly. So you have to go through the batch actually. It's a little bit different than YC does it. YC gives you money immediately once you accept it, but they actually, you have to go through a cohort, and then you do an IC, you pitch them your idea, because initially they're day zero investor, because their idea is a little bit different. They would match founders as well together and then help them build something. Obviously now it's changed a bit. Now they also expect an idea and something before founders join at all. So that time was different. It was more like you can matchmake founders and stuff like that. But we obviously were a team. We joined as a team. You could join as a team and all that. And after like we joined and we got investment, we were super happy about it. Obviously, we were like, okay, now we have some money, some runway to actually go full time on this. We will not die of hunger, and we can work on it. And it was the very happy moment actually. And then it opens doors for you. Like then you become like, okay, you start believing in what you believed more. Your belief becomes stronger. So it was a long way from being in Berlin, very worried, and then coming back and having that investment.
Okay. So what else was positive about actually doing it in a VC dedicated?
I think it also depends.
It also like wasn't a real pre-incubator where you had like go to phases or similar, but it was more like a co-working environment, right?
Yeah, like a cohort,
Yeah.
And more like a cohort. You would obviously have sessions, and you would have like things like where people would come and investors would come, founders would come tell about their stories, like exactly like YC does it, like almost like that. Obviously, you don't spend most of the time doing that. Most of the time, it should be spent actually building rather than actually being in meetings, especially for me. And that's what we did. And I think, it obviously depends if you are building a company where you see obviously you need a lot of capital before to actually create something very, very big. Then a VC is obviously definitely a better option to go for, because it gives you freedom it gives you time. The money gives you time. That's important for early stages.
Okay.
To build something that people really, really want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But that leads us right to the next question. You didn't stay with the GPT wrapper. You pivoted a couple times. I think you said 5 times before the talk. So what were the first pivots? I think I'm actually more interested in the unsuccessful ones, and then we go to the successful one.
I mean, I think the first one was while we were going through Antler as well. Yeah, we had this venture partner from Antler. Yeah, a big legal service provider in Germany, and we started talking to him. We were talking to him every week, so he was assigned to us because he was legal, and we were building legal stuff. Yeah, at that point. And what happened was that while we were talking to him, he was obviously advising us things about different stuff. And eventually it turned out like in every meeting now he's talking to us about his problems that he has this company. And that was actually quite good because we could understand how they work, what are their processes. And Emo and me had a conversation. We were like, you know what? We just talked on the phone. And I was like, they are doing these steps. Like for example, a document or a legal claim comes into an inbox, then they sort it, then people look through it, they compare it, and then they send it out to another folder, and then another team looks at it. It was like this whole manual process that they had. And he was talking to us like, okay, how they are planning to do it automated themselves as well. We were like, okay, great. We talked to him after a week. Within that week, I put together like a couple of cloud functions. For those of you obviously don't know what cloud functions are, just like functions pre-deployed. And then I connected them together to automate the LLM calls. And then we demoed it to them after a week. They were like, he was like, you guys are crazy. You know, just he didn't even tell us to do it, because we were like, we just went around and just tried it out, and we showed it to them, and then they became our first pilots, and they're still our customers to this point. And then obviously from pilot went to like they went turn into a paying customer as well.
So is it also kind of the we talk about make one person happy and go from there?
Yeah, exactly. So we try to make them happy. It was legal automation. That was the first pivot from legal assistance to more like let's do legal automation. And obviously this wasn't a failure pivot. This was more of a good pivot, I would say. It was important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing that's hard with the pivot or preserve. Some things kind of work, but don't completely work. Like there is some interest, but not zero. But it's also not what really moves the needle. I think especially then it's kind of really hard to figure out how to. But I mean, a pilot project of someone really using it is way more than 200 people kind of interested.
Kind of interested, yes, sure, 100%. That's what that's what I think Brian Chesky, like his every podcast that you listen to, like when he talks about startups, when they build Airbnb and everything, he always talks about just one thing. He's like, how they did Airbnb in New York was they went door to door actually to talk to people about like the problems, and then the first Airbnb customer, they actually like hosted them themselves. They they became really good friends with them and probably understood and then they went door to door from there, and it was a long time ago, obviously.
How I don't know if this disclosed it, but how much did they pay initially for the pilot project?
I'm not actually like you mean in the legal service providers. I mean it was like not much, like 800 euros a month plus like on top of usage. That was kind of it, I would say.
But I don't know. Less. Like if you get 3 customers, that's basically enough to live, be able to continue developing it.
But obviously it's definitely it was a good signal for us because we needed money, and then we signed it like after pilots which were much more higher value than that, but it wasn't actually about the money at that time at all. It was obviously you have to get paid for something, and you should obviously get yourself paid if you're building a startup. Don't build things for free, obviously, as long as you're not just building for fun. So
that's an interesting thing, because I mean you do a prototype for free, but nothing for free. So I felt like, especially at the beginning, it's often the case that you think you do it for free to see how people react to it, and if they want it, if they want it at all. So
I mean, sure. Obviously, if you have to make sure that the people want it, and if they want it, and if it's actually solving a bigger level problem for them, they will pay for it.
Okay.
And obviously, it's important to get paid. Like for what you do.
Obviously.
But that's why you're a business, and if you're a non-profit, obviously you have a totally different business model. But if you're a for-profit company, and obviously you have to get paid. Like even if you're building a prototype, or even if you're building a project with someone, helping them, you have to get paid. That's more of like when early stage startups start, they more of in this consulting phase, and consultants get paid. So
then how early would you ask for money? It depends obviously on the business, but
I mean it depends. Like so obviously you could get people to try it out for free initially, and it's always about the problem. It's always like, it's not about the product, it's not about like how you negotiate the deal or whatever, obviously a bit, but it's also about the problem that you're solving. Is the problem big enough? If the problem is big enough, they will pay for it. If the problem isn't big enough, they will think, okay, just imagine I take GPT away from you for a day. What would happen?
Well, okay, but so how would you ask if you haven't the problem, the product already developed, or if it's just if it's just a pilot? So I mean, that's basically the dream of every entrepreneur, like having a customer who pays you to build it. But that's also something quite hard to do, because you really need to get to an idea that close, to a customer so close that he tells you detailed enough what you want without you even having anything to show for. So okay, let's formulate it more clearly.
I mean, I understood. Like, obviously, like in the beginning of the stages, we were not asking them for money. So when we were talking to this venture partner, it was more about that we try to understand his problem, right? And then we presented something which was a solution to his problem, right? So we were like, okay, this is something of a prototype or whatever. We could build it to the next level and stuff. And obviously, then afterwards, they were like, okay, we want to pay you for this as well. Obviously, you wouldn't like do it for free because you're a business. And I think it's I think rarely startups I see who don't get paid for pilots. Like, mostly people pay for pilots if you're actually solving something for them, because for them it's actually cheaper to actually pay a startup rather than a consulting company to build something for them. That would charge them a lot more money. So that's also I would say a different thing.
Yeah, but okay, then that's more true for the B2B domain, and B2C similar, or?
Yeah, this for B2B is definitely true.
Yeah.
But B2C, I mean, we don't have so much experience in B2C. But I would say in B2C and both B2B as well, the network effect matters a lot. Yeah. So it's definitely harder to build something for B2C because it's more for consumers, and to understand consumers, you obviously have to go through a whole different set of steps and whole different stuff, which is totally different, which we really have like no experience in at all. And because in that case, like the problem has to be so much like high pain that like everybody would want to pay for it. But that's like this more like obviously like how OpenAI does right now. So I'm more focused on consumers.
Yeah, it's true.
It's harder to say. It's a very, very good question, but it's hard to answer.
Yeah, I think like for the initial get-go, people nowadays understood that it's really customer-centric, B2B or B2C. And one of the big questions is, how do you get actual quality interviews? Like in that sense, in your way, it was more like on the side, right?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Sure. I mean, it happened. I think you get to a point where you're like, you obviously need to prove yourself that you're valuable. Whether it's through your talking, whether it's through what things you promise, you just have to prove yourself that, right? And once you do that, you just put it there. Okay, this is the offer, and that's it. And obviously, a lot of startups, what they do the mistake is that they don't ask for money at all. Like they ask for very, very less money, or like, which is not a good thing, because people might pay more than you think for something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because obviously for them the important thing is the problem is solved. And like I said, the problem has to be big enough.
Okay, I see. Next customer, €1 per view. No.
Yeah, I've seen startups. That is quite true, because there are startups I've seen like who charge you €5 or €6 initially for like a very, very good product, because they're not confident enough actually to price themselves higher. Even like if you get like a freelance developer from VWork or something, from any of these freelancing websites, right? They're much more expensive than you're pricing your product, which you've spent like months probably building. So that is a different thing, I would say.
Interesting. Okay, so then you had your first customer and your pilot project, and that you still developed it further and pivoted into more of an agency, AI agent model, right?
Yeah. So obviously, like when we were automating this legal tasks for these people, we realized that like the LLM workflows in itself can be customized so that it addresses legal industry, it addresses manufacturing industry, addresses those kind of things. And we started talking with manufacturing companies and others, and we saw similar problems there. And we really, really believed that, okay, we can solve those problems for them. And we did actually. So that's where we went from legal automation. So every pivot actually had a reason behind it.
Yeah.
Something made us pivot.
You don't make it for fun.
Yeah, we didn't do it just because we thought, okay, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Things we did before, they worked. But it's important for startups to actually experiment and move faster. That's the only key. So if you're pivoting fast and you make a decision fast, that's okay. And yesterday I was talking to our head of go-to-market, and he told me about like Code Academy pivoted 16 times, 17 times before, and they pivoted 2 days before their demo day at YC. So they did 17 times. So it's okay to pivot as long as you're confident enough that you're doing it right. And then obviously for us, it was like, we understand the problems. We were very, very sure that this is something we can solve for these like different wide range of horizontal platform for documents.
Yeah.
So then we were like, okay, let's do AI agents mainly for document workflows and all those kind of things where you have a document coming in and sorting it and all those things. And we were able to build different kind of workflows for them. Yeah. So the problem there, we understood that like building workflows for business people is super hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's harder for businesses to build like flows and stuff like that. And then obviously we were going into a bit of a like helping phase for the customer. Like if we'll help you build the flows, then they would use it. But it was still harder for them to customize it. And AI, the models were getting more better. Integrations with LLMs were getting more better. Yeah. And then we decided, okay, this pivot was a mistake, actually, I would say. The fourth one, the last one.
The agent?
No, the agent was good.
Okay.
Because we were still able to we still had customers. There was a reason. The reason was that we have customers from different sectors and we can automate them all if we give them a enough customizable no-code builder. That's what we gave them, like a no-code builder to connect different steps that they took, and the agent will run itself.
Okay.
And then obviously this worked for a while. We became a little bit like, okay, we should do more. We were always like, okay. Then we were like, okay, let's build integrations, not just for documents now, let's build for everything. Automation for everything, like Zapier. Yeah. But LLM first.
Yeah.
Right? That was a mistake, I would say, because that time, the reason for that pivot wasn't because we had a customer that wanted this. It wasn't because anyone wanted this. It's because just what we saw on the internet, like everybody's posting these agents that can do different things. And then we just copied that. That was a mistake because it didn't come from a customer.
Interesting.
And then the final so that's which was quite recent as well.
Were you able to go back to a prior version?
Yes, it was because we were highly customizable. So it wasn't about actually changing the platform. It's about because pivots actually happen in the minds first, right? So you convinced your mind about something else and then you kind of pursue that thing. So that obviously affects if you as a founder have already made up your mind about this is the right way to pursue it, you're going to take actions, as we did, to achieve that thing, right? So the product will take automatically the shape of that, which you believed in. And for us happened the same thing. And obviously we started focusing on these things rather than actually solving problems for the customers that we had at hand to go more further, to actually address more market. That's what was the... And then also we realized that while doing so, it was a mistake to that pivot, but also a good lesson for us because we realized we went too broad. Like, you know, when you go too horizontal, you have it's super difficult. Yeah. Because to create a go-to-market with a super horizontal platform, it's really hard. Yeah. That's what we found difficult as well.
Yeah. But that's an interesting point because I think the ultimate goal of almost every startup is to go horizontal, right? Yeah. You start with a really niche market, bring something new, and then try to go into a larger market. Yeah. And the weird thing is, like, even if you look for companies that could have those patterns, this also won't help you because in the end, then you're hoping for a business model and not really solving a problem.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because you're just, I think there's also like different niche markets are also quite big. Yeah. If you're looking at, obviously, if you're looking at B2B or B2C, that's different, right? Like what's very, very important, I think, for startups and everyone is like to be something for someone rather than everything for everyone. That's the motto, I would say, what we try to follow now as well. And then what we realize that, so when you have a horizontal platform, it's harder to create go-to-market for that because now go-to-market has to be about like how do you reach out to your prospects, right? How do you get them to buy your product? So to do that, obviously, you need to know your customer. You need to know your ICP. Who is your ideal customer profile here? And when it's everyone, it's harder to like, okay, where do you start first? So normally what you tend to do is like where you had the most success, you go there. And that's what we tried to do. And we had obviously very good reaction and all those kind of things. But then we kind of felt that like this is just harder for people, the business people we're not approaching tech people, we're not approaching anyone in the developer, we're approaching people who are in the businesses, in operations, in legal, who don't have any technical background, and it's just harder for them to understand how to build workflows, how to connect different things together, to understand systems. So we had to hold their hand every time to be able to do something with them. Some of them obviously were self-sufficient, like they were able to build flows because they'd done that before. But with the workflow builder, we had a totally wrong idea in mind about like the ICP, the customer. And then that led us to think about like if we address businesses, we should definitely do something with that, and obviously build something that businesses are familiar with, an interface that businesses are familiar with, which is like chat interface, more like a chat interface, but in a more agentic way. So a chat interface is more like you chat with it and it gives you a response on what you asked. Agentic way is more like you do tell it to do something, it goes around and does stuff for you, and then comes back with the result, and obviously remembers and learns from what you gave it.
Interesting. Okay. So what's the revenue now?
I mean, right now we have we've almost, I think, that
monthly or
ARR.
Okay.
Yeah. And then right now we sign another.
That's within 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Oh wow! But
not exactly 2 years. We actually officially were like started in January of 2024. So it's like a
1 year.
Yeah, it's 1 year. Yeah, it's January 2024 we started. Obviously, there was a side project and all those kind of things. Officially, we've incorporated a company January 2024. So like literally on the beginning, first of January of 2024, we were a company.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure about the numbers right now. Because lately my focus has been like our focus has totally been towards like we made a lot of good deals as well recently, and we are like currently focusing completely on our go-to-market as well, while building the better version of what we had. So like I said, like the problem itself was that the business people don't need a workflow builder. They don't want to build things. They're not builders. They're users. This was like a biggest understanding of all that we ever had this year, at the beginning of this year. And then with that came the idea of, okay, let's make an interface that is more easier for them to understand, more easier for them to comprehend in their mind. And that seemed the best way to go for. You just give an agent instruction, does stuff for you, give it results. And digital workers as well in itself, the idea of digital workers came with that we trained and fine-tuned them to act a certain way, to behave like a head of contract, to behave like a... So, for example, there's Mike, it's a digital worker, he's head of generating claims, which people do at insurances. So the difficult part for insurances is like, when a claim is, like, for example, if you claim something, they're able to give you refunds, right? But when a claim gets rejected, there are certain steps that they take. So you use this Mike to be like, okay, hey, you know what, Mike, I got a claim rejected. What should I do? Mike would tell you, oh, okay, here's a template or a draft or for the claim rejection, and here are the steps that you should take. You know, and you don't even have to tell it to do something; it would do it like for you. So
interesting. Okay.
At the moment, like we have two, like Eva and Mike, which are both are going to be soon.
One thing I'm wondering is like, when working, there are sprints and there are marathon, but the whole thing is a marathon. And like, are you still working every day till 2 or 3, or was it more like in a batch? And now where you have recurring revenue, you're more relaxed about. I mean, it's a startup; it will still be a hard working week, but especially like enduring those things for a long time makes it really hard. I mean, hard work is not necessarily hard because the single task is hard, but more because you do it over and over again and have little breaks.
Yeah, I think that's obviously every early stage founder like has to like it's natural that you work a lot every single day, and you're working day and night, and it wasn't just during the cohort. We did it like all the time and still sometimes, obviously. But then eventually you realize that you have a life. You have to live still. You have to do things every day. And because of that, you can have a lot of like personal problems and relationships and all those things like start to get messed up because you're too focused on working, which is harder, I think, when you're doing a startup as well to maintain. And I think then you start to kind of learn slowly that you have to, like, you know, it's not like you have to do everything today. You have to manage your energy a lot. It's important. So if you manage your energy well, like you can get, it's not about how much you work. It's the quality of the work that matters right now. So that's important. If you just stay sitting on your computer all day, nothing is achieved, just did some random things. But were you working on the right direction today?
Yeah.
Even if it was just for 1 hour.
That was what I was kind of thinking about, because I noticed, I mean, now I'm in a research internship, so I have to do a lot of cognitive work, read papers and all of that. And when my sleep is shit, I get really, I notice a huge drop in my productivity because it's just mental work where it's not possible to just go through the motions. And going through this intense phase through months on end, I think would drop the productivity quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, the point was, when do you go from the sprint to the marathon part? Because it's unlikely that someone can do the sprint all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% unlikely. I mean, I think it depends a lot on every person. Like, obviously, when you go in a room full of like early stage founders who are just 1 month old, you'll see a lot of energy in the room, right?
Yeah.
I try to keep in touch with early stage founders all the time and keep meeting new ones because of Antler and stuff, to kind of feel that energy all the time, which is good. You have to use that energy, right? So you use that energy to build something really, really fast and start setting it. And then obviously, eventually things don't just become about building. So for us, for example, it was like, we went, this is what Marcus, he's a head of go-to-market, he likes to call it, we went berserk. So you go after something like and smash it, like, you know, so you have a problem, someone tells you to do some, like, you know, a feature request or whatever, you just go and build a feature immediately, like within a half a day. And that's one way to do things. The other way is like, you get a feature request, someone wants something, some customer, you wait, you're like, okay, let's see how many people want it. If 15 people ask for the same thing, then you're like, okay, now we have 15 people ask for the same thing. Like I said in the beginning about pain point mapping. So 15 people ask for it, means 15 people have the pain. So it's something definitely to consider. And then you put together like a Figma prototype or whatever. Don't build it yet. Just put a Figma prototype together. Try to iterate with your business team and then go and build it. That will be much more useful than just being like, you know, let's smash it. Let's build it immediately. That's what we did also. In early stages, super helpful to do. Maybe in early stages to take this approach of steps might help as well, because that will give you a bit of a structure on your like about why you're doing something. It's always the best way to do it. Like, this is what we learned a lot. Like, not just go after something like crazy. Have a little bit of thought about it. That's more difficult.
Okay. Yeah.
Because building software right now, it's not difficult. It's not difficult to build backend. It's not difficult to build front end. You can just generate code for it. Like, I see every day posts from different people building, like tech people building software without like anything. Models are getting so much more better at reasoning as well every day, and also unsupervised learning for models is also working. So which means the scaling laws keep to work with GPT 4.5 and probably till GPT 5 as well. Which means the coding will be easier. Code generation and like generating front end, generating systems will be easier. But what is difficult is understanding of processes, understanding of the use cases. How would you put together a UI? Because you know, you have to give a model an instruction about like, I want this button to be here or this feature to do this and that. So that's more important. The planning and thinking and prototyping, that's the values of humans than AI, obviously. So
Also really interesting one. Okay. So as an AI founder, it's currently the best thing, but it's now the new thing since 2 years or even a little longer now. We kind of have newly discovered image and video generating capabilities and LLMs. What do you see as a do you see anything new emerging in the AI market, or more just quality improvement of the tools we already have? So I think that's really interesting for founders who are looking for a new opportunity.
I think like just this morning I was reading about MCPs. I woke up and I've been thinking about this lately as well, which I told you earlier as well. We talked about this. And so like you have a universal remote for LLMs to connect with any different tools. Yeah. Because LLMs so far were working in an isolated environment, right? Yeah. So there are LLMs, they work with their own data that they've been trained on. You probably can search web with that and all that. But to build tools to connect them with different platforms and stuff requires you to implement every kind of integration for that LLM, whether it's through function calling or whatever. But now there's a new concept, it's called MCP, so where you kind of build a universal remote for the LLM to actually interact with all of these services just with one protocol, which is insane because now you could make through, for example, it's Anthropic who created it, so you could just go to Claude and be like, hey, you know what, in the Blender where you create these visualizations, do this Blender for me. It would go ahead and use that Blender. Okay. So with one protocol, and you could do the same thing with web search, with anything else. So there's this like more advanced agentic way, more easy agentic way. Yeah. And just where a little bit of shifts in architecture come around, a little bit of changes come around, which just change things entirely. And I think that's why I think YC went from I think they were doing 3 batches a year. I'm not sure, like 2 batches a year to 4 batches a year.
Oh, I thought they were all still at 3, but
yeah, they did introduce an extra batch, which was X of 25, right? Which happens in spring, which obviously I think currently happening. It's because of the technology is moving so fast. Like there are still things happening which change a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I'm not like obviously like OpenAI did another release about a crazy API, for example, response API, and you can use, which is a better version of Agent SDK. It's gonna be a year of agents for sure, but not the agents that we saw last year, but the agents like that can do a lot more than they do right now. Yeah.
So for example, one agent idea I had was for editing this podcast, because after you will leave, I will probably have the video. And then I first have to listen to it again to note the timestamps. Then you see in the high quality studios, there are usually multiple cameras. Yeah. So for this setup, there would usually be 3, one like there pointing at you, one at there like pointing at me, and like one like the one recording us now. And the setup is always kind of the same. You could cut through the people just by seeing, or I think AI is able to
create those angles,
differentiate between the voices, just cut to the person speaking. I think, and to like give timestamp options, or even like if it just tells when the topics we talk about differ, we could put them together to a bigger timestamp or etc. And instead of I will now sit 4 or 5 hours all together. That was kind of an idea I had.
That makes sense, actually. I mean, it's insane, right? It's like so many things happening, so many things are automating. Like yesterday, obviously, we were doing a research about tech stack. I would use GPT's deep research. I was like, why do I need to go through internet for 1 hour? And I can just make GPT do a deep research for 7 minutes. And it'll give me a very, very nice research about everything. Like easier, right? Yeah. So I think it's changing a lot. The world is changing.
Yeah. I definitely the tech world. Yeah. I definitely have, and that's the fear of moving, of not moving. So the internet was the last really, really big invention in the 2000s. iPhone and phones were another really big one. But I think AI could be as large as the internet, and
it's just the beginning. I feel that this is gonna. It's actually quite exciting as well to see, because we are living through this phase as well of changes and things are changing. Just imagine what will happen after 10 years. So this is just the applications that came around like within the last years. So a lot of things will probably change, and like new technologies and new way of doing things for sure.
Okay, so while we're at the future, what are the plans for 9.13.ai?
I mean, for 913, the plan is that we are focused on insurances now, completely. Digital workers, specifically for insurances and enterprises, where we automate most of their operations, customer support, generation of claims, and all that. And we're working towards these workers still, improving them, and making them really, really understand the processes of different insurances. So we could actually give out departments of digital workers. So you could go to an insurance could buy a department of operations of digital workers who would take care of, for example, what happens after a claim gets rejected, what happens, how do you compare contracts. So you would have teams of these digital workers working literally all 24/7 for you, rather than, obviously, with humans we have a lot of limitations, like in terms of there's for example, you have to manage, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you get tired, you need weekends and stuff. But with digital workers, they don't get tired. They work all day, all night, 24/7. And with obviously LLMs getting better, and with the new kind of agentic ways of building things, obviously we want to keep up with that, and probably make a world better place in terms of operations, for sure.
Then to understand you a little bit, what made you pivot to insurances? I mean, it's less broad, but
because we were working with public insurances in Germany, and we had the greatest success with insurance. And the insurance market is quite big as well. And we are rolling it out internally within this insurance, which has more than 20,000 people working. So it's already, with just this insurance, a great thing. And obviously we have more insurances who we are currently approaching. So if you're an insurance and you want digital worker, just reach out to us for sure. And we're trying to understand more problems within the insurance operations. And the reason for this was one of these reasons, and obviously go a bit niche as well, and to really just focus on one thing, to really focus on just one department of digital workers, to really provide value there. That was the reason for the pivot as well. And this is something we are best at. So platform, we don't have to build stuff, we don't have to understand agents, we don't need to understand anything. You're just a user. You just go there, you have a job to do, and you give the worker the job that you wanted to get done, it'll go ahead and do it for you. Basically that. Just you explain it in your business language, not in a tech language. So nothing about agents, nothing about tech to understand there.
Yeah, interesting. It will. I'm curious how it will turn out.
Definitely, you will know about it.
Yeah. Okay, then I have one question for every guest at the end, and it's, what were the personal biggest learnings for you throughout all of your journey about entrepreneurship?
I mean, there were a lot of learnings. If I were to describe them, it would take me a lot of time.
The biggest one.
The biggest one would be, I would say, that when we always have this idea of ourselves in our mind that something is difficult, something is harder. You've already made up your mind about something, that this is something I can never achieve. This is something I can never do, because only certain people with certain smartness and certain level of experience can do it. That's totally stupid. You don't need experience. You don't need education to be able to build something great. You don't need anything. Just need one thing, that is consistency. And you need to be consistent, do the thing that you love, and you need to love what you're doing. Actually, that's very important. And that's what I learned. If you do something that you really love, you care about it, and you enjoy doing it every single day, then you will definitely succeed in that. Not because you're the best, smartest person, because you were consistent and you were the ones who cared about it. People don't succeed because they're the best Einsteins of the world. People succeed because they just stick to it.
Okay.
That's what I would say. Just sticking to things. That's the biggest learning.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. I think I have no more questions left. It was really, really interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
I did. It was quite fun, actually. I really love to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, maybe we will do another episode in a couple of months.
Definitely. I would love to be here again. I really enjoyed this podcast. It was really a great experience for me. It's my first podcast ever, so I'm trying to get into podcast business.
What will be interesting by then? So I've had the idea iterating each episode one bit better, and you will iterate on 9.13.
Yeah.
And I think it will be very interesting to see both changes.
Yeah, definitely. After a few months and maybe some faster than that.
Yeah.
There will be changes for sure.
Okay, then. Goodbye. Thanks everyone for watching. Think about subscribing and checking out 913 if you are an insurance company.
Thank you.
Bye. You made it until the end of the episode. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. Bye.